This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor Jon Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
Not even halfway through the yeyear. I feel like we've definitely lost some legends this year. And well, I grew up a huge Braves fan, so the passing of Bobby Cox is a big deal for sure.
Of course. So TBS, we had access to TBS growing up. So
Yep.
if it wasn't Cincinnati, Chicago, really, we saw more Chicago stuff, WGN, and then Atlanta. So with the Atlanta Braves, I guess, because Turner Broadcast owned, I guess, the rights. And so Ted Turner, did he own the Braves too?
He owned the Braves and TBS. I think, did he?
Okay.
I can't remember. My math is if he launched TBS before CNN or if he networked with TBS, Turner Broadcasting Network. So anyways, yes, that was the genius of Ted Turner, that he made Braves fans from Florida to Georgia to Washington State and California. There were Braves fans everywhere because there was always a Braves game on because everybody had TBS. It was brilliant, this move. So,
and back in the day, it was the team of the South.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have all the Florida teams and things like that. So, I mean, the Atlanta Braves, that was like the Southern team. That's kind of what, my family from Nashville and South Carolina, that's what they followed. So it was easy to catch up. I remember my very first baseball glove. Dale Murphy was the name in my Rawlings baseball glove growing up. I only realized I was talking to Mark Owens, who I guess has been the on-field voice of the Atlanta Braves forever. Mm-hmm. But he was just saying that Dale Murphy is not in the Hall of Fame. I didn't even know that.
Yes, it's a big controversy amongst baseball fans.
But I was just talking to him, about Braves. I was like, man, I remember Dale Murphy's got to be in the Hall of Fame. He said, no, it's not. There's a whole
every
thing
year
about that, so.
There's riots over it. So maybe
there should be
2027. Hanging on.
Come on, 27. That's the year. That's Dale's year. What's it been? Probably 35 years since he retired.
Too long.
That's okay.
Too long.
Okay.
Well, speaking of the legends we've lost, so yes, we were talking about Bobby Cox, leading into the conversation about Ted Turner. He founded CNN. He made Braves fans across the country, broadcasting the Braves across TBS. So he recently passed away at age 87. He launched CNN in 1980, but it was 23 years later, after the Time Warner merger, he was effectively fired from this company. Yeah. This is Ted Turner.
I got phased out. The management at Time Warner called me in and said, your contract's going to be up and we want to give you another one. I said, well, tell me. They said, well, we'll give you $1 million a year. And I said, well, what will my duties be? And they said, nothing. Really? At least they were honest. So I said, you can take the $1 million and shove it you know where.
He always had his wits and sense of humor about him. And I mean, gosh, he really did retirement right, though, because if you go back and learn more about what Ted was doing after he left CNN and his TV career behind, he was buying land, he was operating a bison ranch and giving away billions to charity. It's a good perspective and a reflective opportunity for the folks that you work with, folks that are listening to us on the radio right now, Jon, as far as how we should think about staying productive, staying present with our wealth, not just preserving it in our retirement.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, right? So when most people walk into retirement, they kind of go in with one mindset.
Yeah.
Don't run out of money. Of all things, just don't run out of money. And of course, that's important. It's what's mostly on people's minds, but it's also incomplete. So it's very interesting. What Ted Turner showed us, it's the other half of the equation. So I also have to remember this. In 2003, when he lost his job because the Time Warner, the merger, people forgot that was AOL. That was one of the most horribly screwed up mergers in the history of American finances. When you look at the AOL Time Warner merger, it was it was terrible. But the amazing thing is that didn't daunt Ted at all. So when he actually retired, he did 3 or 4 things. Now, I did not know this, Heather, because I looked this up.
Yeah.
Those bison farms that you're talking about, do you know that Ted's Montana Grill is Ted Turner? Mm-hmm. I never knew that. I've eaten it, I don't know, 5 or 6 of those places over the years. Yeah. And for some reason, never put together that Ted Turner was Ted's Montana Grill because he basically put billions of dollars into bison farms all over the United States and then actually had a restaurant that served it up to people to show them, see, this is what we need. We need more American ingenuity and we need more ranchers and we need more of these things so we can go, quote unquote, farm to table. But those things I find to be so amazing. Instead of using retirement as, hey, how do I just preserve what I have?
Yeah.
He actually did the other thing around. He said, okay, what is my money able to do?
Yes.
If I'm not able to do as much as I used to, either because he wasn't able to, or, we age, he was in his 80s and still doing all kinds of stuff, but he had been giving away money forever. As a matter of fact, I guess it was the year after the Olympics in 1996. I think it was 1997. He was at the United Nations black tie event, and he stood up, and he was the keynote speaker. He stood up and he looked out at the room, and he announced that he was giving $1 billion to the United Nations. Now, this is 1997. This constituted the largest single gift ever given in American history. $1 billion to the United Nations in 1997. The craziest thing is he didn't stop there. He kept giving away money after money after money to try to do things. And this is interesting because this is the thing that I always talk about. And I said that Ted Turner had the other side of the equation. It's not about how do I preserve it. It's what can I do to let it work for me? How can I extend my legacy or the things that I've been doing even further? So whenever we work with our clients, preservation is the floor, and this is important, but it's not the ceiling. Preservation, protecting what we have, is the number one pillar of anything we do, but that is the baseline. That is the floor. That is the worst thing that we would ever want to have to deal with. And most of the time, people find out, oh my gosh, John, if that's the floor, man, that's okay. I was like, right. We're not striving for the floor. We're striving to a limitless ceiling, hopefully, over time. So a real retirement plan needs to answer 3 major questions. I feel pretty certain that Ted figured this out. Number 1, what do you really need? That's number 1. That's the floor. What do you have to have? Shelter, food, the ability for transportation. That is what we need. Then what do we want? Do we want to have lavish vacations, every single year? Do we want to take the grandkids down to Disney? Do we want to get on a cruise? Maybe not right now with this hantavirus stuff. Maybe not a cruise at the moment, or maybe we could choose a different cruise line. But those are the things that we want, right? Those things like, hey, do we want to have a bigger home and have our extended family live with us? What do we want to do? And then the last thing is that what do we want our money to do after we're not here anymore, right? And if we're married, and many of us are out here, so when we're married, the biggest thing is, okay, I may be gone. Is there enough for my surviving spouse? Are they going to be taken care of? And as long as they're taken care of, then that's great. Our retirement goals can be met. But so many people I talk to, they say, John, I want a little bit more for my kids. I mean, my parents didn't have a lot to give to me, and I love them. And I know I've already given them everything, education and opportunities and stuff, but I really want them to have more too. And the question is, what do we want that to look like? What can that money do when we're gone? Because it's really simple as long as we have a plan for it. Right? So what I would always say to anyone is when we're starting to think about that planning process, it really comes down to what is going to be the thing that is going to stop us from hitting that. Is it going to be income? Is it going to be to maintain the lifestyle? Is it going to be healthcare? Is it going to be giving money to the next generation? Because I would like more of us to do our giving while we're living. Because what I didn't mention earlier is when Ted Turner stood up in 1997 and said, I'm going to give $1 billion to the United Nations. He lasted for 25 years after that and got to see what that gift accomplished. Now, I don't know if he thought that was a great gift based on that or not as good of a gift, but the point is that he got to see the fruits of his labor. And that's what I want more of us to do our giving while we're living, whether that means help out the grandkids, because we know our retirement's going to be fine. We know we're going to be okay. I want us to have that joy of being able to give that gift. I've read 100 times and I've experienced it myself, and I know that many people have. Seeing the face of someone that is truly appreciative of a gift is maybe one of the greatest joys of life. I really do mean that. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room with someone who is just so giving, so honest, so reflective of their life, and they want to pay it forward, but they don't want to do it when they're gone. They want to do it before then, not because they want that feeling, because they know it's the right thing to do. And they just get to have that feeling. So as we're thinking through retirement, protection of the money or the preservation of money is a piece of the puzzle, but it's really what we want to build for the rest of our lives. And what comes after that, that is so important. And that's what we do in the office every day.
John and his team here to help you walk through this process, figuring out how to build a plan around what you need, what you want, and what you want your money to do while you're here and after you're gone. If you don't have a plan for these questions for yourself, for your family, for the years ahead, Give us a call. Let's get to work helping you build out this plan. The number to dial, 502-317-0840. 502-317-0840. Is the 401k dead? Let's discuss. Because as an idea, well, it was first created in the 70s. Then it took off in the 80s and in the 90s. But at inception, it was created as a way to defer taxes on certain income, not to be used as a primary retirement plan. However, for so many Americans, that's what it has become. So is the 401k dead? Is a question that Yahoo Finance actually asked Charles Payne with Fox Business. This is Charles Payne's response.
I don't know that it's dead. I will say, though, that the 401k hasn't lived up to the hype. And I think that's one of the problems, right? And every year they come out and they'll say we have this many 401k millionaires, right? And it sounds like a huge number. Cool. Then you say, well, how many people have a 401k? And it's like 0.03% of everyone with one. So the promise was that if you just put this money in, it was going to end up being worth a lot of money. And I don't know that it's dead, but I think people have to approach it differently. And I think they're starting to, particularly like the 60-40 portfolio. I think that's a huge mistake. On the 40 side, 40% in bonds, I think is just a massive mistake at this point.
The 401k as a tool, you can't deny what it has done for savings, for people to save for retirement. But on the other hand, it was created a long time ago for something that we do not use it for in the same way, John. So maybe it needs a revamp. What are your thoughts?
Well, is the 401k dead? The real question is, was it ever meant to be the retirement plan of America? The answer is no. So when you look at why does it even called the 401k? Well, K is so the 401k is the subsection of the tax code. K is the paragraph. So in 1978 is when the IRS adopted the subcategory of the tax code. It was 2 years later that a benefits consultant in Pennsylvania named Ted Benna looked at that and he said, you know what? I think I found a way for executives, highly compensated people, to peel off a little bit of their income and put it someplace to defer taxes and maybe have it grow. That's how it came up. So it was 2 years after it was on the books that Benna said, hey, this may be really good for executives. Flash forward to today, it is essentially the retirement account for America. And that's the problem. It was never meant to have such a heavy lift. So when someone says, is it dead? The question is, should it have ever been considered America's retirement plan? Now, as a tool, as one account that we can defer and save money in, is it great? Yeah, but it was never meant to do this. And we have seen the failures. Charles Payne, obviously on television every day, giving us analysis for finances. I agree with him on this. It really comes down to what should a plan look like? Because a 401k is just a tool. It's just an account. It is not a plan. Right. And that's where most people fail. They just don't have a plan in general, Heather.
All right, so here we are, though. It's 2026. Yes. We're close to 50 years into using the 401k. It sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, what you just said, 401k was meant as a way for rich people to defer taxes. And here we are, regular men and women of America, using it to save for retirement in a space that so many of us are just uneducated. The idea of financial planning, market investments, all these things, and yet we're expected to manage it.
Well, the craziest thing is, and I think you make a really good point there, where you say, we're uneducated. The thing of it is it changes nearly minute by minute anymore. Okay. Congress can go out and they can make a tax law change, and all of a sudden it shuffles up the entire deck. The president of the United States can go in and tweet, or whatever they call that these days, and truly change how markets respond and how plans operate, even what countries that are considered allies or no. So things happen very quickly now, with 24-hour news, network 7 days a week. And so because of that, we just can't keep up very easily. And that's not our job, right? If we're accountants, our job is to account for things. If our job is to plumb, then we're plumbers and we do that. If our job is as a carpenter, we go work with wood. How many of us truly sit down every day and say, my job is to analyze all these investments, find the proper criterion for me to base my entire livelihood on for 25 to 40 years in the future, and make sure I'm adjusting that correctly on a daily, quarterly, monthly, annual basis? We don't do that, mainly because that would make us slam our head into the wall or pull all of our hair out. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
So, in my industry, that is what we deal with. And there are days, guys, that I want to slam my head in the wall and pull all of my hair out. You can start to see some of the thinning now. It's no joke, based on what's happening that day, what the market cycles are doing, what the headlines are doing, and how people react. So what I would say overall is, when we're thinking about all these things that we can deal with, this is one of those things. It's kind of like, I don't change my own oil. I used to know, when I drove an old Chevy truck, I knew how to do it. It wasn't complicated. Now, if I get into my Japanese or German car, I'm not even going to lie to you, I don't know where the dipstick is in the German car. Not a joke. You have to take off this piece, literally, that is hiding the engine in my German car. You have to take that off to see what the actual engine looks like. I wouldn't know how to do it. So this is one of those things that it makes a really good decision for most of us to get a second opinion and find out, what are we missing? Of the tools we currently have, are we utilizing them correctly? Are they efficient? Because when it comes to a plan, that is one thing that a 401k is not and never will be. It is a savings account that, if your employer pays in and matches in with us, that can be great. It could be the only quote unquote free money that we're ever going to get. And I have to, put an asterisk on that free. We have to put blood, sweat, and tears and getting up at 6 a.m. to be at the office in order to get that gift of free money. But I don't think that its intent, I think it's run its course. Okay. So I think it does need a revamp. If you're looking at the things that I think it really needs to have, it needs to be more automated. It needs to be auto-enrolled, auto-rebalanced, auto-escalate. So every time that we get a pay raise, it automatically bumps up. If we did that, it would be better. Right? It won't be set it and forget it, but it would be better. But currently, those three things are not on the plate yet. It'd be nice if they got there one day. It still is never going to be the end-all plan for Americans.
RetirementSolutionsShow.com is where to go to start the conversation with Jon and his team about understanding what your 401k is doing for you now, what it can and will do for you in the years ahead if you do nothing as is, or if you get to work creating a plan for the proper adjustments going into retirement. It's retirementsolutionshow.com, or click on the links we've got posted. All right. With all of that said, so many of us arrive to retirement with, a lot of Americans, right? They've got their house and they've got their 401k. Sure. And now we have to change we have to put a new lens on it, a new filter on it.
Absolutely.
So when we get to retirement, hello, Mr. Hicks. I've worked very hard. I've got $2 million in my 401k. Help me. Now, Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so that is the great question. And that's what most people, that's what we graduate to. As we're working, the objective is keep doing your job. Be good at your job. Get promotions in your job. Move up the ranks. Go to a better company that pays you a little bit better for your job. Just keep putting money in to this account. That's what a 401k is. It's just the account, and we accumulate and grow money over time. That's great. Now, when we get to that time period when we're thinking about hanging it up, where that paycheck is not going to be coming in because we want to retire. Hopefully not tomorrow. Hopefully we've given this a little bit of thought, and we're looking 3 to 5 years before we retire is the objective, because then you can turn that pile of money, that 401k bucket, you can turn that into an actual game plan where you can actually create income streams, right? So if you look at it, the reason why really great, skilled, holistic advisors build models, they do it for a reason. And so our model we have 5 pillars in our model. Number 1, 2, and 3 are the most important, and the 401k does nothing to help with it. All right. And that's the important thing. So when we're thinking, okay, Jon, I'm thinking about maybe retiring in the next 2 or 3 years, what can I do? We need to figure out, number 1, how much of what you've saved needs to be protected so that you can stay retired. And I know I've said this hundreds of times in the past. It is just as true today. And my guess is it'll be just as true 10 years from now as it is the very first time I said it. When we retire, we can't stay retired if we don't protect what we have. If we lose 50% tomorrow in a market, crash or something like that, we probably wouldn't have enough to stay retired. So number 1, we have to know what percentage of our 401k or IRA or whatever we've got needs to be protected so we can stay retired. That's number 1. The second thing is great. Now that we know how much protection we need, how much income can we create? That's number 2. And the thing of it is that we always want to have a floor. The things that meet our basic needs so that we can stay retired. That is the floor. And for most of our clients that have done a really good job saving, we've saved a couple $1 million, $4, $5, $6 million. So we don't have to worry about the floor. We're trying to figure out, great, we know that we're going to meet all of our basic needs. Now, what can we do? Now, what are the things that we want, our desires, our dreams? How can we give more to the kids or grandkids or our churches or our organizations? Those are the more important things. That is what we want to try to build, and that's income. And the third thing is, how can we keep more of it in our pocket and out of the government's, right? Because if we don't have a plan, if we don't have a written tax strategy, then the government already has a plan for us if we don't have our own. And chances are it's just going to take more of what we've saved. So a 401k is great to save money, but we need 3 primary and fundamental things in order for us to get retired with a real plan. We need protection, income, and tax design. There's 2 other things, but those are the big 3. If we got those 3 down, we're in really good shape. And unfortunately, the 401k just doesn't do that at all on its own.
I was about to say, we need protection, income, and tax planning. 401k, does it check any of these boxes?
Protection, no. Income, no. Tax planning, absolutely not.
Yeah.
0 for 3.
Yeah.
Now, as far as saving money, great. As far as
Right.
what do we do to turn that big old pile of cash into a paycheck in retirement so that we can do all the things we want, it does none of that. Absolutely none. So, once we get to that point where we're 3 to 5 years before retirement, or we're 59 and a half, at 59 and a half, we can make different decisions. We can take that 401k and put it in any investment structure we want. Most people roll it into their own IRA, and they can control those things. They can control how much protection they have. They can control the income types of things, whether they're looking at TIPS, which are Treasury inflation protected securities, or bond income, or annuity income, or pension style income. They can do all that.
Right.
And then lastly, that tax structure. It's how we pull it out. We have to have a defined plan on when we pull that money out to win that tax game too.
The 401k is a great savings tool for so many Americans. But when it comes to what to do with that money in retirement, it's not exactly set up for your best interests. But at J. Hagan Capital, they are here to show you how to take this precious 401k that you've worked so hard to build and now make it work hard for you, generating income, adding layers of protection, and of course, tax efficiency in your retirement. So if you've got questions, let's get to work helping you get some answers. RetirementSolutionShow.com is the website, or you can just click on the links we got posted here. Sell in May and go away. Perhaps we need to let it go away and stay there, gone in the past, is what some are saying about an age-old market strategy. It's one of the oldest sayings on Wall Street. The idea is simple because stocks tend to underperform in the summer. So the idea is you should step aside, don't worry about your market investments throughout the summer, rejoin the market investment world ideology and strategies in the fall. However, John, some are saying that perhaps this rule needs to be put to pasture. Actually, on MarketWatch.com, an article was talking about it's old and we need to let this rule go. Why are people beginning to say that?
So, the question is, should we sell in May and go away? Is that a strategy that ever has ever worked? And then what should we do going forward? When I look at this, I am one of those weird historical nerds. So when you look back, sell in May and go away. I remember learning this in the 1990s in my MBA programs and all my economics coursework. Sell in May and go away. And it has been on Wall Street for a very long time. Here's the amazing thing. Heather, do you know where the concept of sell in May and go away, do you know what that actually refers to? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was in 1776. So originally, this had nothing to do with Wall Street. This was in England, in London, in 1776. Sell in May and go away and come back on St. Leger's Day. What on earth is that? Well, St. Leger's Day was the day of the St. Leger's Stakes. It was a big horse match, and it happened in the early fall. So amazingly enough, London bankers would, they would have their May, they would have record profits in their May, and then it got hot in London in the summers. And so they would go out to their country estates, as we do. We go out to our country estates, our horse-driven carriages out to the country estate, and we're just going to shoot dove and maybe pheasant and squall and things like that. And they did that for the whole summer, let the kids play around, probably one of the only times they really saw their families back in the day, and they wouldn't come back until St. Leger's Day, which was the St. Leger Stakes horse match in the fall. That is where sell in May and go away comes from. because these bankers weren't doing the business. There was nothing really to do. So they just took the time off and enjoyed the summer. And amazingly enough, that was adopted by America during Wall Street's, I guess, initial heyday when there were a bunch of traders in New York, literally at the corner of Wall Street and I believe Trinity. At least Trinity Church is right there. I can't remember if it's Wall and Bank, maybe. But whatever it is, that's where it came back to. So historically, when you look at this concept of in the summer months, it doesn't do as well, so you might as well just sell your stocks and stay out of the market. Guys, in the last 33 years, that has actually been incorrect. As a matter of fact, more than 50% of the time, you would have left large percentage of returns on the table had you sold in May and go away. But to me, the biggest thing is this, whenever you hear those kitschy, rhyming type, riddles or poems or rules to live by, if it fits on a bumper sticker, it probably is not a real good strategy. So the question is, where did it come from and does it make sense? But I hear this and I see this all the time, Heather. People have these ideas of how they should invest because they heard it from somewhere, and usually it is one of those limericks or a rhyme or whatever. Like I remember the one that's used all the time now is Warren Buffett, saying 2 rules of investing. Rule number 1, never lose money. And rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Now, that is easy to say. It could even go on a bumper sticker, but is it really doable? If we want to get attractive long-term results, performance, typically we're going to have to take some form of risk. It's just how it works. The risk-reward relationship, there is some correlation there. So to never lose money often means that we're not risking it. And if anyone has seen inflation recently, if we don't have something that can offset inflation, we could be in some trouble. But I think this is really good. When someone is looking at their portfolios that are listening to the show today and they're kind of thinking, that's interesting. How am I invested? What is my written investment policy statement? And if you're out there saying, well, I know exactly what my written investment policy statement is, awesome. You are in a very small camp. Because most people say, written investment policy statement, what is this fool talking about? Written investment policy, all I know is that I got these stocks and they've done good for me, and I got these funds and they've been good, and I've got these ETFs because they're low cost, and that's good. The question is, why did we do that in the first place? Do we know, is there method to our madness of where our portfolio is? And half the time, Heather, most people, they don't know.
There are a lot of things that a lot of very smart people don't know when it comes to their investments, because we take so much blanket advice, particularly during our working years, when it's just like, just save as much as you can, just save to your 401k. And in our working years, in our accruing years, a lot of blanket statement, it can be healthfully applied. But when we get to retirement, we have to change our perspective on so many things. So thinking about the outdated strategies, thinking about how we need to modernize our thinking.
Yes.
What then do we lean into?
So if you think about it, really it's not an investment strategy so much, it's a paradigm of thinking. When we are saving money and we're investing, the objective is to put our money in a place that we're comfortable with that risk and let it grow. And hopefully over time, it doesn't grow necessarily tomorrow, but over time it grows. Now, when it comes to retirement, it's different. We don't want, or we don't need growth as much as we need the ability to harvest what we've saved. We need the ability to, instead of growing that acorn into an oak tree, we need the opportunity to harvest that wood so that we can live in retirement. So instead of growing, what we need is a good portion of that portfolio to give us income. And it's just a different way of thought. So a lot of people, it's not that they're using archaic investment ideas. It's just we've changed. There's a different inflection point. Now it's not about growing $1 into $5. It's about taking that $5 and how much of it can you live off of for the next 25 to 30 years and still not deplete it. And it's a very different game. I mean, to the point where in the last several months, we've been talking a lot about Howard Marks and William Sharp and some of these Nobel Prize winners who are unbelievably genius when it comes to finances. And they all say the same thing. It is really, really a lot harder to distribute money to live off of in retirement. It really is. It's harder to do that than it is just to grow it.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, and this is why, Buffett is very famously said, and Jack Bogle and a lot of other guys, hey, you just need to put your money in the market and let it do its thing. I, to some degree, kind of agree with that while we're growing it. Mm-hmm. Now, when it gets time to the point to where we need to harvest it and utilize that money and make sure, number one, we protect it, we create income, and we're tax efficient, guys, it takes a completely different mindset. And for some people, it is hard. I mean, it is really hard for them to shake that. Hold on, John. I have owned 100% of my money in American equities for the last 30 years, and I have, boom, destroyed it. I have done so great. What do you mean I need to change things now? Well, now you're welcome to my world where it's very, very different. It's like, it would be awesome to think that we just select good investments. We don't need to pull any money from them. We don't need to stress the portfolio. We just let it ride and keep doing its thing. It's very different than saying, hey, John, here's what I got. How can I be certain that I can live off of 4 or 5 or 6% of this, have it keep up with inflation, have it last as long as my surviving spouse, potentially have enough money to pay all the taxes, and then give something to the kids? Oh, and be certain that I don't go bankrupt if I have healthcare concerns. Ooh, right? Very different than just putting $1 in and hopefully it turns into $1.10 in a year or two. Right?
Yeah.
Very different. And so that is the paradigm that we need to change and think about. It's not the investment strategy. It's how we think about investing in general. Because once we get to that point of retirement, 3 to 5 years before we retire, that becomes harvest. We now are harvesters of our fortunes instead of growers. And that's the biggest thing for most people to change.
Yeah. Well, change is inevitable in retirement. Gosh, it's interesting to think about because, you feel like you arrived to retirement and things should be slowing down or steadying up. But I mean, for so many people, I feel like most of big life changes happen in retirement.
Very much so. And people always think, and we're just told this, hey, when you get closer to retirement, things are going to be easier. They're going to slow down. You're not going to have as much complications. It's a lot easier. Guys, I have seen it with my own eyes.
Day in, day out. Yeah.
For the last 20 plus years, 25 years nearly, I've seen how life does not slow down for most people when it gets to retirement. They stay busier. It's all the stuff that they put on the back burner because they had to go to the office every day. They had to go to work. They had to go put the shingles on the roof. They had to go, redo the gutters. They had to mow the grass. They had to do all those things that we put off because we were working. Now we're going to doctor's appointments. We're doing this. We're doing that activity. We're all these things. We stay busy. Here's a crazy one. Believe it or not, our tax returns get more complicated often in retirement. When we're working, most people, they essentially have a couple sources of income.
Right.
A husband and a wife or 2 spouses. They typically have whatever they work their job.
Yep.
And they get their W-2s and they get the return. In retirement, we're potentially going to have Social Security income, pension income, interest income, withdrawals from our 401k or IRA, annuity income, real estate potential income, all different forms of income, deductions, tax liabilities, and so forth. And that creates a completely different static. So people that have not done tax planning, when they get into retirement, they realize, holy crud, I used to do this all on my own at TurboTax. And now, hold on. John, is CD interest and bond interest different than dividend interest? Is that different?
No.
Yes. Is pulling money from a traditional IRA different than a 401k? The answer to that is potentially yes. Is that different than a Roth? Potentially yes. Is that different than taking a withdrawal from the death benefit of an insurance contract? Yes. Is that different than annuity income? Yes, guys, it's all very different. And so most people that have not needed a financial planner or a tax advisor up to this point, they think it's going to be easier. It's not.
Yeah.
It's often much more complicated. And that doesn't make it bad. It just means that now is a great time, even if you've killed it on your own, doing everything you needed to do to get to that point of retirement. Now it's a different inflection point. Now the idea is, okay, now how do I maximize or be the most efficient with where I am today? And that often requires a different set of eyes for most of us.
John and his team, they are here to be that set of eyes on your savings. So if you've got questions, let's help you get some answers. Visit us at retirementsolutionshow.com. Just like investing rules change, life changes. It's the one consistent thing we can always count on. Things will always change, but at J. Hagan Capital, they're here to help you build a plan to flex with you throughout the course of your retirement. Visit us at retirementsolutionshow.com or click on the links we got posted here. Excuse me, sir. How dare I? Am I even allowed to look at you in the eye? Am I allowed to touch you? You've just been, we always talk about how you're rubbing elbows with the country music folk. You have leveled up on this one. You just flew yourself to Mar-a-Lago. We didn't fly yourself, but you had the chance to go to Mar-a-Lago to hang out with Donald Trump Jr. What was that like?
Well, I tell you what, and I don't think this is odd for me to say. It was awesome, firstly, but it was very different than I expected.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I expected. It's not very often that you get to sit down in the home of a sitting president and be able to talk to, I guess we'd call the first son of the president of the United States of America at the point of power. So it was really kind of amazing, and not because of me being starstruck, although I was. It was really because of what Don Jr. said. And it's kind of crazy to me, really. He was unbelievably well grounded in a way that I don't know what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, a billionaire, a child grows up, dad becomes president underneath all kinds of crazy circumstances, comes back into office, all this kind of stuff, the assassination attempts, all this stuff. I don't know what I expected, other than I was unbelievably not only enlightened, but I left being a little bit of a fan of him, not just of number 47, but of him for the things that he said. And that's probably the biggest thing. It's probably going to stick with me for a long time.
Okay.
Some people, they just have a way of making you change your opinion, or they give you a different color to something you saw before. And that's probably what I would take away the most from that experience.
It's interesting. Yeah, because definitely people can present when being presented in different ways through different platforms. So getting to meet him one-on-one like you did, definitely a perspective change can be expected.
And I'll give you some background. So one of the things he said in the very beginning is, listen, when we were growing up, I don't know what anyone perceives as our childhood was like. And I don't think that I'd realized this. Don Jr. grew up in Mar-a-Lago. He talked about being at the upper area of one of the big rooms when he said, when all the old rich people would be down there, he and his sister would be up there with raisins, throwing raisins into the old rich people's cups.
He was a kid.
How many of them?
He was a kid too, man. He was a kid too.
How many raisins?
They didn't have iPhones back when he was growing up. You had to find yourself ways to entertain yourself.
Exactly. But they would throw raisins into people's cups. And I laughed about that. And he said, that's just, the childhood memories. He goes, but when I got to a certain age, I knew how to drive a tractor. Why? Because my dad made certain that I knew, hey, we have to use these tractors out here when we're demolishing all these properties, when we're doing all this construction work. And so you have to know how to do it. So he knew how to drive a tractor. How many billionaires' kids do you know that would be able to go up there, unless it's related to John Deere himself? How many people do you know that could go out there and actually fire up a huge tractor and start to potentially clear a construction area? I don't know anyone that could do that.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't even think. I would have never thought that. He talked about when he was growing up, he would go to his mother's homeland when it was still Czechoslovakia and hang out with his grandparents when it was still communist. And he talked about how they would literally be in lines to get food for his family, for his mother's parents, when he was in Czechoslovakia back in the day. And he said that was such a different world.
Yeah. Growing
up in Mar-a-Lago, which is an unbelievable place in the world, but then going over there and standing in bread lines and seeing what communism and socialism was really like. And it was terrible. He said it completely shaped everything that he thinks about to this very day. And that was just very different. I don't know what I expected. I didn't expect to hear that. I expected him to talk more about, what his dad did in the boardroom and all these big decisions. And instead he said, no, my dad would take me out to a work site and show me, this is how you mix concrete. This is how you do it poorly. And this is how you do it right. It was the basics. How do you do the basics, and how do you master the basics? And I just really remember thinking to myself at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly like what we do in our industry, focusing on the basics. How do we, number one, when we get to the point of retirement, how do we make certain that the basics are fulfilled? How can we protect what we got, create income so we can stay retired, and keep more of it in our pocket and out of the government's? That's it. And that was the craziest thing about, is he was talking about these things. He didn't talk about, the boardroom wins. He talked about his dad wanted to build character in him, wanted him to be tough, wanted him to understand. No one's going to hand you anything, kiddo. So go out there and earn it for yourself. And I just thought that was very different. I don't know. I didn't expect to hear that, I guess is what I was going to say. I expected to hear other things. But he was very honest. Yeah. Very honest about, when people say, I can't believe that your dad tweeted that. He was very honest to say, hold on. Just so you know, do you think that we don't tell him to please don't tweet stuff like that? Because we do. But if you want to handle, the whatever he's going to say next, you go do that. I thought that was amazing to me, that it was just very honest.
Lots of obviously opportunity for perspective lessons in life I'm sure all the Trump children have been exposed to. Of course, very few of us grow up in the environment to learn the ins and outs of money for so many different reasons. But that's why some of the most valuable lessons come from the ground up, particularly in the space that you work in, Jon, in the financial area. While you were at Mar-a-Lago, Don Jr., he spoke about how his father made sure that he learned business the hard way, starting with the basics. This is Donald Trump Jr.
His theory was really simple. It was a lot of common sense, which these days we all know is not too common. But it was, hey, if one day you're going to go build a building, you better know how to dig the foundation. You better know what it costs to actually do these things. You better know how much time it takes, because otherwise someone's just going to screw you blind if they just think, you're just the guy in the gilded office with no understanding of what's going on. You're going to get taken advantage of. And so I learned so much more, and we really were, raised by like construction workers far more than the executives. He said, there'll be plenty of time for the executive stuff once you get out of college. But when you're young and you get those formative years, you're going to live with those tough guys that'll actually make you tough.
Tough guys make you tough, Jon. And thinking about the work that you do, sometimes you have to have tough conversations with people in your office. But this is why they come to you, right? They are seeking solid financial advice. So how do you help somebody understand the tough love can be a good thing, particularly when it comes to their money, getting comfortable with their plan and not getting overwhelmed by it all?
Well, it's easy to get overwhelmed. And if you think about it, most of the people that sit down with us for the very first time, they're not financial experts, and they shouldn't have to be. They're engineers, they're teachers, nurses, business owners, contractors, as Don Jr. was just talking about, and they built their wealth one paycheck at a time. They didn't have a trust fund one day. They didn't do that. And so they don't need a lecture on standard deviation. They need someone to walk them through the basics to understand how much does it cost to clear the land? How long does it take to build the foundation? Because if you don't know that, you will never have a solid foundation, no matter what you put on top of it. And those are the things. So what we do in our office is walk people through the basics in plain English, because that's actually what matters. That's the foundation for a successful retirement. We never deviate from our 5 core pillars. We don't do it because we know it works. Number 1, we got to protect what we have to protect in order to stay retired. Number 2, we have to generate an income in retirement. Number 3, we want to spend more of our money. We don't want it to go to the IRS or the government. So we need to be tax efficient on how we do that. Number 4, what happens when we're gone? Do we have enough money for our surviving spouse? What about our kids? What about our grandkids? Do we have enough to do that? And lastly, how do we take care of healthcare? And when everything going out today, these days seems to cost more and more and more when it comes to healthcare, how can we make sure that doesn't derail us? Those 5 things are unbelievably basic, but those things are what we have to win. And so much of what Don Jr. said is like, oh my gosh, it's just doing the basics. We don't need to know stochastic indexes. We don't need to know Elliott wave analysis. Now, do I know that crap? Yes. Do I use it? Ever? No, we need to know how much of our money is in a place that we could potentially lose it, how much of it is in a place where we're going to take appropriate risk based on our risk tolerances, and what does that mean? What can we accomplish when we do that? That's the more important part. So the 3 foundational questions that we go through to get those basics are, number 1, what's your money doing right now? Like right now, there's nothing wrong with what you say. It's just, but what's it doing right now? And is it what you wanted it to do? That's first. Just what's it doing? Where is it? Is it working for you or are you working for it? Number 2, what do you want to do over the next 20 to 30 years? Not what do you have to do? Like, oh, I have to pay for my mortgage. I have to pay for healthcare. No. What do you want to do? Do you want to travel in the summers? Do you want to go, summer is festival season. Do you want to go see some of those bands play live? I mean, what would be exciting? What would be fun? But what do you get to do over the next 30 years? And lastly, what is the biggest risk between where you are now and what you want to achieve? What's it going to be? Is it going to be taxes? Is it going to be inflation? What about market drops? Healthcare issues? Living too long? All those things could impact us. And we don't know which one is going to be the most impactful until we know what your money currently doing and what do you want it to do. Because our whole job is just to get those 2 to line up. What you want to do, that then dictates where we put the money. Crazy, isn't it? Most advisors, I know that because I train them out of this nonsense. They lead with, look how great this product is. Look how wonderful. Look how great. Look how magical, majestical, sexy. Look at the sizzle of the steak. And they talk about a product like that is what we're buying. No, guys, we should be getting a process. How can we be certain that once that product fails, fizzles, dies, does terribly, that we still have a plan that we can stick with to let retirement work? That, believe it or not, is exactly what Don Jr. was saying. His dad made him get into the muck, into the trenches, see where the mud happens, see how the sand gets everywhere, how the dust flies all over the place, so that he can figure out, is that what they need to do here, or do they need to do something different? The plan shouldn't be complicated. It should be plain English and understandable, because the people that have plans that are things they understand, guess what, Heather? They stick with it. Mm-hmm. Amazing. But if we understand things, we'll often stick with it. It's when we don't understand things that, unfortunately, things go very wrong.
It doesn't have to be complicated either. It's almost something, if you're working with an advisor and all they do is complicate things for you or confuse you.
That's the wrong advisor.
It's time for a second opinion.
Darn straight.
This is the universe telling you to call Jon Hicks, because he's here for you. Let's begin the conversation helping you understand about your plan, your money, your future. It's retirementsolutionshow.com, or just click on the links we've got posted in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with Jon Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with Jon and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to Jon's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency, and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 1882794.